Okay. So have you ever, like, stood in the kitchen aisle just staring at a wall of nonstick pans
Mm.
and kind of felt overwhelmed by the choices?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we've all been there.
Right. Like, what's the deal with all these different types? What makes one better than another? What are the things they don't tell you on the box?
For sure, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Totally. And that's why we're doing this deep dive today, to break it all down so we can all be more informed when we're choosing and using nonstick cookware.
Exactly. We're going to cover like what it actually is,
Right.
the pros and cons, how to make sure you're using it safely and getting the most out of it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can cook with confidence and not worry about ruining your pans or, worse.
Right, exactly.
So let's start with the basics. Like, what exactly is nonstick cookware?
Well, at its heart, it's usually a metal pan.
Yeah.
Aluminum or stainless steel are common because they conduct heat well.
Right.
And then it's got this special coating on the cooking surface, and that's the key to the whole nonstick thing.
And that coating, I mean, there are different types, right?
Yeah, we'll get into the specifics of those a bit later.
Okay, cool. So, but the main idea is that whatever that coating is, it's designed to stop food from sticking, right?
Precisely.
But like, how does it actually do that? What's the science behind it?
So it's all about surface energy. The coatings like Teflon, for example, they have this incredibly low surface energy, which basically means they're super slippery.
Ah, okay, so it's like the food just slides right off.
Exactly. It just doesn't want to bond to the surface.
Interesting. So obviously that makes cooking and cleaning easier.
Oh, yeah, big time.
But are there other benefits to using nonstick?
Definitely. So one of the biggest ones is that you can use way less oil or butter when you're cooking.
Oh, right, because things aren't sticking and burning.
Exactly. And that can be a big plus for folks who are trying to eat healthier.
For sure, less fat in your food is never a bad thing.
And there's actually research that shows people who regularly use nonstick tend to consume less fat overall.
Really? That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a nice little bonus.
So less oil, easier cooking. What else makes these pans so popular?
Well, let's be honest. Who doesn't love easy cleanup?
Seriously, it's the best.
Right. With nonstick, you can often just wipe the pan clean with a sponge.
No more soaking and scrubbing for hours.
Exactly. It's a huge time saver.
I am all about that. Yeah. So what about the actual cooking process itself? Does the nonstick surface affect that at all?
It can, yeah. Nonstick coatings often help to distribute heat more evenly across the pan's surface.
Oh, that makes sense.
So you're less likely to get those hot spots that can burn your food.
Right. Where one side is burnt and the other is still raw.
Exactly. Nonstick helps you avoid that and get more consistent results.
Okay. And I've noticed that a lot of nonstick pans are pretty lightweight too,
Yeah, especially the ones made from aluminum.
which is nice, especially compared to something like cast iron.
Totally makes them much easier to handle.
Okay. So we've talked about all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Less oil, easy cleanup, even cooking lightweight. But I know there are also some concerns about nonstick cookware, right?
Right. There are some things to be aware of.
Like what?
Well, you might have heard some things about safety concerns with nonstick, specifically with Teflon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
So those concerns mainly stemmed from older versions of Teflon and a specific chemical that was used in the manufacturing process.
And what was the issue with that chemical?
There were concerns that if those older pans got overheated, they could release harmful fumes.
Okay, so is that still a worry with the nonstick pans that are made today?
So the good news is that modern Teflon coatings are made differently. They don't use that chemical anymore, and they're manufactured under much stricter regulations.
Oh, okay, so they're safer now.
Yeah, the risks are significantly lower, especially at normal cooking temperatures.
That's good to know. But it's probably still best to avoid overheating them just in case.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a good rule of thumb to avoid going above 500 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, 500 degrees noted.
And keep in mind, most cooking oils will start to smoke and break down well before that point anyway.
Right, that makes sense.
And this is also partly why ceramic coatings have become more popular. They're often seen as a more natural option.
Yeah, I was going to ask about those. What exactly are ceramic coatings made of?
They're usually made from mineral-based materials, often silicon compounds.
Okay, so they're not using those synthetic chemicals that people were worried about with Teflon.
Right, and some folks just feel better about using something that's perceived as more natural.
For sure.
Oh, sure.
So are ceramic coatings just as good as Teflon in terms of non-stick performance?
They can be really good initially, but some studies suggest that they might not be quite as durable as Teflon over the long haul.
Interesting. So they might wear out a bit faster.
Potentially, yeah. But on the flip side, they're generally considered safe at higher temperatures than Teflon.
Okay, so it's kind of a trade-off then.
Yeah.
Teflon might last longer if you're careful with the heat, but ceramic might be a good choice if you prefer a more natural material.
Yeah, exactly. It really depends on your priorities and your cooking habits.
So regardless of which type of nonstick coating we choose, are there any, like, general care tips that we should follow to make them last longer?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, never ever use metal utensils on your nonstick pans.
Okay, metal is a no-go.
Yeah, even if it seems like a smooth metal spatula, it can still scratch the coating.
And those scratches, I'm guessing that's what makes the nonstick start to wear off?
Exactly. And it could potentially lead to small particles of the coating coming loose over time, which you don't want.
So wood or silicone utensils are the way to go.
Precisely. Those are your friends when it comes to nonstick.
Noted. What about cleaning? Any specific advice there?
Yeah, definitely stay away from anything abrasive like harsh cleaners or steel wool.
Oh my God, steel wool, got it.
Those will absolutely ruin your nonstick coating.
So just gentle soap and a soft sponge.
Exactly. Treat them with a little TLC.
And what about dishwashers? Are nonstick pans generally dishwasher safe?
Some newer ones might be, but honestly, hand washing is always the best bet.
Really? Even if it says dishwasher safe on the label?
Yeah, because the high heat and the harsh detergents in dishwashers can wear down the nonstick coating over time.
Ah, okay, so a little bit of hand washing now could save you from having to buy a new pan sooner.
Exactly. It's worth the extra effort.
Okay, and once they're clean, what's the best way to store them?
Good question. So ideally, if you have space hanging them, is the best way to prevent any accidental damage.
But if you don't have room for that,
Then try to avoid stacking heavy things on top of them. The weight can scratch them. So if you have to put a soft cloth or a paper towel between each pan to protect the surface.
okay, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of just piling all my pans on top of each other.
Yeah, we've all been there. But a little bit of padding can go a long way.
So if we follow all these care tips, how long should a good nonstick pan last?
You can usually expect to get around 3 to 5 years out of them with proper care.
It's not bad.
No, not at all. But of course, the lifespan will vary depending on how often you use them and how well you take care of them. Right, makes sense. And how do we know when it's time to finally say goodbye to a nonstick pan?
Well, the most obvious sign is if you start seeing any scratches, flaking, or peeling of the coating.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's a clear indication that it's time for a new one.
And what if there's no visible damage, but the food is starting to stick?
Yeah, that's another telltale sign. Even if you're using oil and cooking at the right temperature, if things are starting to stick, it means the nonstick properties are wearing out.
Gotcha. So those are the red flags to watch out for.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about the different types of coatings earlier, Teflon versus ceramic, but can we dive a bit deeper into those?
Sure, so Teflon's been around for a long time, and it's known for being really smooth and having excellent nonstick capabilities right out of the box.
Right.
And as we've discussed, the key with Teflon is just to avoid overheating it and to use gentle utensils.
Makes sense. And what about ceramic? You mentioned it's often marketed as a more natural alternative.
Yeah, that's right. It's typically made from those mineral-based materials we talked about. So are there any downsides to ceramic coatings?
Well, as we touched on earlier, some studies suggest they might not be quite as durable as Teflon over the long run.
Okay, so they might need to be replaced a bit sooner.
Potentially. But again, they're generally considered safe at higher temperatures than Teflon.
So it really comes down to personal preference.
Exactly. Weigh the pros and cons and figure out what works best for you.
Okay, and one last question about non-stick cookware. Do they work on all types of stoves?
For the most part, yes. They're usually compatible with gas, electric, and ceramic stovetops.
Okay, good to know.
But if you have an induction stovetop, that's a different story.
Oh, right. What's the deal with induction?
Induction stoves require pans with a special magnetic base. That's how they generate heat.
So a regular nonstick pan won't work on an induction stove?
Nope, it just won't heat up.
Okay, that's important to remember.
Definitely. Make sure your pans are induction compatible if you have that type of stove.
So to wrap things up, what are the key takeaways that everyone should remember about nonstick cookware?
Okay, so the big ones are cook at moderate heat. Never use metal utensils. Clean them gently by hand and store them properly.
Those are some good, solid rules to live by.
And if you follow those simple guidelines,